Scouring the internet for writing tips? Welcome to the HTHGYPAN series. That's a title. In other words, how the hell do you publish a novel? Where I give you a step-by-step guide on how to indie publish your book from start to finish. This is episode 2, and today we're covering characters! In the last episode, we talked about starting from scratch, and I mentioned, because we love a good character-driven story, but we'll talk about that more in the next episode. Well, now is the next episode. This episode. Whatever. Anyway, characters are central to your story. Some might even say they're the most important part of your story. It's me. I'm some people. Think about it this way. When you're reading a fictional story, are you sticking around for all the horrible events? Or are you sticking around because you've become emotionally attached to these characters, they are your children, and now you need to make sure that they survive all of this? Personally, I'm the latter, but some people aren't, and those people are psychopaths. It's okay. If you saw my search history, you'd think I'm one too. I am not a serial killer. I am an author. So now that we've established that characters are important, let's talk about how to create them. Personally, I'm a fan of a little arts and crafts, a little cut and paste of my personality onto each of my characters. They say to write what you know, but don't forget to give them flaws. This is the big issue that people have with self-insert characters. Now, I don't care if your character is a self-insert because frankly, we all want to be the main character of a fantasy story sometimes. I want to be magical, but you have to remember that you are a human being and as such are a hot mess. Trust me, you have flaws. But we love you anyway. If your character isn't flawed, then they're not relatable. And it doesn't make for a particularly interesting read, because if they can do no wrong, then what's the plot? Good question, what is the plot? We'll talk about the plot in another episode, but there are generally two different story types. Plot-driven and character-driven. Character-driven means that your characters are actively making decisions that move the plot along. Plot-driven means that outside forces are pushing your characters through the story. I find it best to do a little bit of both, but if you have to choose one, I'd choose character-driven because it adds more depth to your characters when readers can see them taking action and making choices. This is why developing your characters before the plot is helpful, because you now have their personalities and can throw them into any situation of your choice. Burn the building down! And you'd be able to see how their specific character type would react in that situation. Of course, your characters will develop more as the story goes along, and you will become more familiar with their voice and characteristics. There are tons of ways to craft a story though, so don't feel pressured by anything I mentioned here. These are just my personal preferences and experiences. Hope this helps, and as always, happy reading, happy writing, and good luck. See you next week in the next episode.